Time to talk about the best books that I've read in 2024. I don't feel like this year was my best reading year. However, this top 10 makes me believe that the year was not for nothing. Definitely some all-time favorites here that I will be able to rave about. Plus, I will get to complain in my next video, my worst books of the year, but all the ones that I never want to talk about again, unless it's to complain. So, let's get to them. I'm really excited. You will find some new favorites in here. I am sure there's a little bit of everything. The first book I read this year was the first 5-star I gave this year, which is The Will of the Bodyy, and this was your recommendation. I'm doing the same thing next year, which my first reading vlog of the year is going to be your recommendations of your best book from the year prior. So leave in the comment section your best books of 2024, the ones you read this year and you loved, and I will be reading them. So I did that earlier this year, and this was the first book that I read and the first book I gave 5-star to. What a way to start the year. Nothing else compared afterwards, which but this is an adult fantasy series. I really enjoyed the magic system, the world building. There is a murder mystery kind of magical school. There's great friendships. I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what was going to happen. I have been joking around that the world building / magic system is a giant MLM. Like a pyramid scheme, because there are 8 levels and they all have like Roman names, which I will not attempt to name, but people at the bottom give their strength to the people at the top, and then, you know, higher and higher they become stronger and stronger. So people at the top are like the strength of like 1,000 people. So like I said, a pyramid scheme. And the main character is from the royal family of people that were conquered by this group, and he's hiding his identity, and he gets sucked into going to this magical school to solve a murder mystery from someone else. A lot happens. I was very invested in the story. I have been joking around that this was a tentative 5-star just because there were a few things that was like, it seems a bit convenient. Like there's a scene with the wolf. I'm gonna keep this vague to keep the spoiler free. And like, it doesn't seem to need to sleep much, but with that said, I love the ending. I thought, again, the friendships were definitely the strength of the book, and I'm really invested to see how the story is going to go outside of the school setting. So very interested in continuing. Book 2 is coming out next year, and I will be reading it as soon as it's out. So fantastic. You have to read this if you haven't yet. It's a thick one, but you will read this so quickly. Loved it. Another fantasy that I really enjoyed, but this time a standalone, which this is the reason I had bought this book, and then it spent like 5 years unread on my shelf. But when I finally got around to it, 5-star. Loved it. This is The Goblin Emperor. And I feel like everyone has been going crazy over cozy fantasy, and I feel like this one gave me a little bit of those vibes because it's almost slice of life. But the main character is the son of the second wife of this emperor. He met his father just a couple of times in his life because he was really in love with the first wife. She passed away, got married to his mother. She died and he was sent away and, you know, hasn't seen him since. But his father and brothers die in mysterious circumstances and he becomes the emperor. So he has to go back and figure out, okay, what do I do? Who are my allies? Who are my enemies? There's a lot of political intrigue, and it's definitely day to day, so that's why it kind of felt a bit cozy to me. The main character is also really likable. I just enjoyed following him as a character. I will say English is my second language, and there were a few sentences that are like in Old English that was a little bit harder to go through, but otherwise I just once again could not put it down. I was really invested in the story, and I feel like there aren't enough fantasy that are standalone, so I highly recommend you pick it up. It deserves so much more hype. I feel like I haven't seen anyone talk about it in years, so definitely worth checking out. The next book was also one of your recommendations, and I am still in pain, okay? It's one of those books that it hurts, but like so good, and it's this one. This is 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this strange world. I think I had mentioned that there was a book I liked where the main character dies, and that's literally how the book begins. So you recommended this one to me, and so the main character is a sex worker and she is killed and her body is left, is it next to? In a dumpster. And it's in Istanbul. So for the next 10 minutes and 38 seconds, her brain is still working and you're getting flashbacks of her life. So how she grew up, the important moments in her life, the important people that she had, and kind of getting to the point where she ended up being murdered. In the second part of the book, you're following these people, the people that were important to her, and the effects that her death has on them. And definitely some trigger warnings. Obviously, you don't get to that point in your life without having had a lot of events. And I would say genre-wise, it's a bit of a mix. I would even say a little bit literary fiction. I meant magical realism, but a little bit also. And I was okay with it. It's usually not a genre that I really care for, but this was amazing. I did try to read another book by her and I didn't finish it. It is part of what I call my pile of shame. So I'll get to it again. If you have a favorite, another favorite by her, please let me know because her writing was amazing. Again, I was so in love with the characters. I really cared about them. I wanted them to be okay after going through all of this, which obviously, you know, the character is going to die throughout the whole book, or like half the book that you're following her story. So it's really difficult because you don't want it to happen, but it will. So if you're someone that reads more contemporary literary fiction, that want to follow more stories that are character driven, you need to read this. I hadn't heard of that author either, and I have another one too actually on my shelves, and I'll try them again. Amazing. Definitely outside my comfort zone, but in a good way. Super painful though. We're going back to fantasy. I thought I hadn't read that many, but then the best ones I read were fantasy. And this one is also the first book in this fantasy series, and it is The Tainted Cup, which I think it is underrated, because on the Goodreads Choice Award, it was pretty low. Not that many people had read it and voted for it, and it deserves so much more love. If you enjoy murder mystery in a fantasy world, this is it. Again, book 1 came out this year, book 2 is coming out next year. I already have the arc. I will be reading it as soon as I can. If you enjoy like Sherlock Holmes, but like a female character that has to solve murder mystery again in a fantasy world, I would highly recommend checking it out. She will not leave her room, but she will solve it anyway. She's sending her assistant, which is the character you're following. And in that world, people can have some magical powers, and people meanly call him a cloth sniffer, because he gets to have this very good memory, but he has to associate the interrogation, the places that he explores, with a scent. So he'll walk around sniffing his jar. And then when he gets back to her, he will sniff it again and then tells her everything that has happened, everything that was said, everything he has seen, and he has like perfect recall. So in the story, there are some important people that keep being murdered in like very magical way. We're going to say it that way. And they're investigating, so there's a ton of political intrigue. At the same time, you're getting hints of the world building that I'm hoping you're going to get more answer in the next one. But there's this giant wall in the north that tries to protect them against these giant monsters. And every year they come back stronger and stronger, and it looks like the wall is going to fail. So again, I'm hoping that we're going to get more of that in book 2, but I really, really enjoyed it. I've realized at this point that I really like those like murder mystery and fantasy worlds. So this is amazing, deserves more love. If you have yet to pick it up, I would highly recommend it. It was fun. The next book was not fun, okay? But we need to talk about it because I absolutely adored The Story of the Lost Child, which is the last book in the Neapolitan series by Elena Ferrante. I adored this series. It is a 4-book series, and I've been trying to stretch it for as long as I could. This is, I think, my 3rd year reading it, 4th year. I was trying to like stretch it as much as I could because I didn't want it to end. I haven't been this emotionally invested in attached characters ever. I love these characters, and it's not just the 2 main female characters, it's definitely the whole neighborhood. But you're following them. The first book starts and they are in their 60s. One of them disappears and the other decides to sit down and write their life stories, and you're sent back when they're children, and then each book you're following them further and further. And in this one, I believe they're in their mid-30s at first until their 60s, and my gosh, I don't even know where to start. This book is about friendship, yes, but it is about growing up in poverty. It's about education. It's about class. Frankly, that's the main thing. There's a lot of political events, so a little bit historical fiction, I guess. And it is heavily inspired. You cannot convince me otherwise by the author's life. You don't know who the author is, which there's this layer of mystery also added. And she has to have known these people because they feel so real and raw, and like they drive you nuts because they make mistakes. Some questionable choices, but you care about them. You want everyone to be okay, and they're not going to be okay because it's real life. Real life. But I adore this book. I couldn't even tell you which book in that series is my favorite. All I can tell you is that I will be rereading this series multiple times in my lifetime because you're following them for like years. And I feel like if you read it as a teenager, as an adult, older and older, like I feel like you're gonna get something different out of the book because she doesn't scare away from like talking about hard topics. Again, I'm gonna try to keep it somewhat vague. It is extremely character driven. People either love or hate this series, but I absolutely adore it. Again, really not my usual cup of tea, but it is one of my all-time favorite series. I adore this. Amazing. Easiest 5-star for the whole series. But there are a few characters that I would like to say hi to. Let's include something a little bit more fun, although dark humor. But still, I laughed a couple times. And it's a book I just finished, and it is The Wedding People. Oh my gosh, you guys were right. This was the winner in the Goodreads Choice Award in the fiction category. And that category for me tends to be a bit more hit and miss. It's not my main genre, and I don't always agree with what's popular. Again, I feel like the difference for me in these kind of books is if I'm emotionally invested. And we're seeing a pattern in here. I love these books because I cared. But in this one, it's mainly the banter. I feel like I've seen multiple weird descriptions about this one. People saying it's a little rom-com. I would probably say that it's an adult chick lit. Meaning that there are some deeper, darker topics, but it's handled in an almost like lighter way. Because again, of the humor and the banter. So you have this main female character who goes to this very fancy inn that she's been dreaming of going to. And when she gets there, turns out there's a wedding and she wasn't supposed to be allowed to be there, but too late, she's there. And she is there to end her life. You don't really know what's going on, but she ends up talking to the bride. They start having this conversation because how dare she ruin her week? Because again, it's not her day, not a wedding day, it's a whole week. So you have the banter going on, the friendship developing between the characters, you get those flashbacks, how they got to that point, and again, I just really enjoyed it. I say chick lit just because I feel like the way it's written, it's so readable, almost a bit like beach read, but again, I feel like it goes deeper because yes, the darker topics, but it's like, you know how sometimes I'll describe a book and call it like a dad recommendation? I feel like this would be a great mom recommendation. The main female character is 38 and she's feeling really lost in life where she basically has to reinvent herself. And I feel like that's something a lot of us could relate to. And I can't recommend this enough. I so agree with Goodreads for once. So if you have yet to pick it up, I'm here to tell you that this is worth the hype. It's super quick. It's like 300 something pages. I read it in 2 days. Okay, I needed to know and I just laughed a couple of times and this was great. I will actually reread this, which I never reread books. So this is good. I will be even letting other people borrow it, which like, I don't know if I'm going to see my copy again if I do that, but like the book is good enough that it's worth the risk. So yes, we are flip-flopping between genres, but Gone Girl. I had attempted to read this book before I watched the movie and I put it down, I think like 50 pages into it because I could not stand Nick. After watching the movie, it made sense. I completely understood why I did that. I was right. But I didn't think the book would be so much better than the movie, and the movie is good. I feel like there's only one scene that is better in the movie than the rest. You get so much substance in the book compared to, again, the movie. Amy's amazing. I feel like I can't help but joke around about that topic because people take it wrong. I have been known to say that Amy is relatable. Amy did nothing wrong. And by that, I mean, Amy's obviously unwell, okay? Well, let's just say it. I feel like it's almost impossible to not include some mild spoiler in here, but hopefully you've seen the movie. But she's unwell. There's no contesting that. I agree. However, they deserve each other. And like, she wasn't fully wrong because Nick is so he's the worst. He's the worst. Perpetually seeing himself as the victim. And like, he was raised that way, right? His mother basically was dying and like cutting his crust on his bread. Like, obviously it wasn't going to end up well. But I feel like in the movie you get the quote of the cool girl, and obviously it's included in the book, but you can see the amount of post-its I put because there are so many more quotes like this. This is one of the best books I have read. I wish Gillian Flynn, please, girl, come back. Help us, okay? I'm so tired of trying to read mystery thrillers, and these authors cannot write a convincing female character, complex, morally gray. They can't do it like you. This was my last book by her, and now my life has no more meaning. I need more of this in my life. I need more Amy or just, again, messed up female characters that do make some good points, and that is the important thing to get out of this. Amy did nothing. But seriously, I just enjoy a good revenge, like female of rage kind of story. And again, some interesting points, some valid ones were made in here. And if you have yet to read the book and you're like, oh, I've seen the movie, you still need to read the book. It is that good, and it's incredibly enraging against Nick. Worth the read. Absolutely amazing. I can't believe it took me this long to actually finally pick it up, but it was worth it. Oh, so good. Another amazing book that I want to recommend is All the Colors of the Dark, which this is also not usually my cup of tea, but this is why I keep trying books that are not necessarily just fantasy sci-fi. However, this is labeled as mystery. No. This is more like drama, very character-driven, very slow pace, but I love the writing of the author. This is my second book by him. I read We Begin at the End, which I listened to that one as an audiobook, which was a mistake. Read the ebook or physical book if you can. In this one, you're following these people from this small town in the US. especially these two friends, a boy and a girl, and they are very poor. And the boy is missing an eye, so he walks around with an eye patch. Everyone calls him Patch, and he believes himself to be a pirate. He's a kid. And one day, he intervenes when the pretty rich girl from that town, someone attempts to kidnap her. So he intervenes, he gets injured, he gets kidnapped, and you're seeing the rest of their lives and the impact of these events have had on everyone. So that's why I mean, like, it's very slow paced, a lot of time happens, and this is the kind of book that for me was vibes and the writing style, which again, it's not something I usually say, but you're either going to love it or hate it based on that. It's definitely very character driven. Once again, don't expect mystery. It's not really about getting answers, it's just enjoying the ride for what it is. So I really enjoyed that one. I would highly recommend it if that sounds appealing to you, but blew my mind. I will continue to read more by the author. Other Birds, I have read a couple books by this author and she keeps mesmerizing me. I feel like she's really good at writing kind of cozy books, but cozy is probably not the way most people would describe it. The main female character's mother passed away a few years ago, and as she's getting ready to go to university, her father gives her the keys to this apartment that she has. So she goes there to live her life. It's very like found family, making friendships, finding answers about her past. There are ghosts, which like saying it's a ghost story is so wrong because it's really, really not. Maybe like a touch of magical realism, but even then, that's a little bit of a stretch. And again, it's not a genre I like, but I really love this book. I feel like this is a good beach read kind of story. It's cozy because, again, the found family vibes, making friends. And even though there's some action, to me, it feels more character driven and a little sad. It's just a good mix, and it really took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, and I will continue to read more by the author. I think I've read like 4 of the books at this point, and 2 of them actually made it to my best of the year that I read them in, so it's a good sign. I will continue to read them. This is good. Underrated. We are finishing this video with the same author we started the video with. The book is called The Shadow of What Was Lost, and this is the first book in an adult fantasy series that I will be finishing next year. I'm doing a challenge where I attempt to continue, catch up, or finish as many series as possible. A lot of them are going to be fantasy, and I'm going to do just that with this one. After reading The Will of the Many, I wanted to get more from this author, and this whole series is out, so I started it, and it is thick. It's definitely thick. And it is very classic fantasy, like Chosen One, magic system. You have, again, this wall in the north. But it works. I did feel like it also has a few weaknesses, but it's still a 5-star to me. So the main character grew up in a magical school, and people that are there, if they don't develop magical powers in time, they get scarred and they can't use magic anymore. So he's very stressed about being able to show that he does have magic, and as this test is about to happen, he has to go on a special mission. But I was mentioning how there were a few moments that some things feel a bit easy and convenient, and then the author has to come back to fix it. So for example, the main character can tell when someone lies, but then the author again comes back and fixes it. Otherwise, the power is too strong. And he did that a couple times throughout the book, which this is why I'm saying tentative 5-star, but I had so much fun that I don't really care. And there's a bit of a mystery towards the end. I want the answers, okay? Again, it's a trilogy. All books are out. They're all this thick. I have a 3rd one right here. Look at this. I'm happy they're like paperback because this is dangerous. I can't wait to continue, and again, I will be attempting to do this for my challenge next year. I'm looking forward to it. As much as I joke around that it's a tentative 5-star, 2 of his books are in here. It's a sign that I need to read more by him. Great fantasy. It's making me want to go back. Like, there's no needless like essay scene or that kind of stuff that I hate. That's why I kind of stopped reading fantasy, especially from male authors, because it was relentless. Did not have an issue. The bar is low, but I enjoy this. I'm actually pleasantly surprised by the array of genre in this video. I feel like, yes, there are 4 fantasy, but everything else is just different genres, different things I've been trying out. There's no sci-fi. Honestly, this year was not a good sci-fi year, but that's okay. We still have next year. I would love to know if you have read these books. What were your thoughts? Did you also enjoy them? And I would also like to know which books did you love this year? Because again, my first reading vlog of 2025 will consist of reading yours. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be putting more videos on the screen of the rest of this series I'm doing with my end of year videos. So my best was today. I did my most surprising, most disappointing, and there's also my worst that are coming up, plus a bunch of bonus ones. So I will see you then. Bye.